Hello, everybody. It is the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Don't be a doofus. It is a super chat night, I believe, and we'll find out. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to do just a regular show, and if nobody comes on, then nobody comes on. That's fine. Why I'm doing a super chat? Well, I'll wait until we get a few people in here. I want to begin by talking about the settlement on the case of Breonna Taylor that was announced today. If you haven't heard, it was an historic settlement. There was a settlement of $12 million given to the family of Breonna Taylor. It's the biggest settlement ever given to a black family. So it's historic, but yet some will say not historic enough. Why wasn't it the biggest settlement in history instead of just to a black family? But also, the settlement came with reforms, which I think should set precedent for future settlements in things like this. And while the Mayor Fisher of Louisville, he said that he looked at this as trying to, quote unquote, move the rock forward. He was moving the rock forward by agreeing to this settlement, and that it was not a sign of wrongdoing. Those are quotes. And I want to make clear, this is the civil settlement. This is the first thing that pops into my head is the O.J. Simpson case, where there was a criminal trial and there was a civil trial. Well, instead of a civil trial, in this case, the city agreed to settle with Breonna Taylor's family. So the criminal trial will still proceed. And as far as we know, the case right now is in the hands of the grand jury somewhere in Jefferson County, Kentucky. I want to read the reforms that go along with this $12 million settlement, because the reforms, it's kind of unprecedented. As I said, I personally, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to have Dave on. Dave Lackford, our attorney, is going to come on at some point here and actually, get into the legal stuff of this. But just from someone that's been watching it for an awfully long time, the reforms, while not enough, are a pretty good start. Ban on no-knock warrants, mandatory independent investigation of officer-involved shootings, create an officer of inspector general, civilian review with subpoena power, and that's important. We'll have Dave talk about all these things, as I said. A new police chief. So they've accomplished these things. Now, early action warning system to identify officers with red flags. That means officers that have the potential to not act within the guidelines of their duties. Let's just put it that way. Mandatory commanding officer review and written approval of all search warrants. A mandatory written approval of SWAT matrices before search warrants are executed. An overhaul of processes for simultaneous search warrants. Mandatory EMS paramedic presence for all search warrants. Remember, Breonna Taylor was shot, and it was an extraordinary amount of time. I don't remember the exact time right off the top of my head, but she laid there bleeding out basically with no medical assistance. So paramedics presence for all search warrants, mandatory body cameras by 2 officers for the counting, sealing, and processing of all currency seizures. because see, there was all this cash that was supposed to be at Breonna Taylor's, and then there wasn't any cash found. And so if there was all the cash, did the police take the cash? And that's what I'm not saying they did, okay? But that's what that specific reform is about, because it created such speculation and it created such doubt in the character of a victim. And that's done quite often. The elimination of the closed by exemption basis for closing investigations into officer conduct when there is retirement, resignation, or termination. In other words, if you terminated an officer, you can't investigate him. If the officer's retired, you can't investigate him. If the officer resigns, you can't investigate him. So they're closing that. They're eliminating that loophole, if you will. Mandatory records retention of PSU complaints and investigations, encouraging officers to perform at least 2 paid hours a week of community service in the communities they serve. Protect and serve, that's supposed to be the intent. Housing credits for officers to live in our city, that's the city of Louisville, and hiring a team of social workers to assist with dispatched runs so that police aren't trying to handle situations that all they can use is a hammer, and that's not what's required. So the reforms, hopefully they've all been promised in the settlement. Hopefully they'll all be enacted and enacted soon. And hopefully this settlement becomes a blueprint for other settlements. And again, the criminal trial is still ongoing. This has nothing to do with what's happening in the criminal trial. That case is in the hands of the grand jury of Jefferson County, and it's a super chat. I'm doing a regular show, but if you want to get a comment noticed and you make a little donation to the show, then the comment gets noticed. And if you make a big comment, we'll talk about whatever the heck you want. The reason I'm doing this, twofold. 4 weeks ago yesterday, I lost Kay. And Kay was my partner, my roommate, my lover, my friend. I still have the same expenses, even though she's not in the household. Okay. And then Friday, I was informed by UPS that a registered thing from UPS that the job I had was ending, effective immediately. So I can Uber, I can DoorDash, I can do something like that, 60, 70 hours a week and get by. Or I can occasionally ask, if you want to help. It's not mandatory. It's not required. It doesn't mean I'm not going to see your comment. It just means, and we're still going to have live shows where it's just a couple of things and then I look at all the comments. So this is just a way, if you want to help out, that you can possibly do. It's not mandatory. It's not required. And now back to the show. Chris, last episode we had Chris on, and having Chris on is important for many different reasons, but to me it's important because Chris knows combat, he knows security, he knows strategies, and to me, the more you know about combat, the more you know about war, the better prepared you are to fight for peace and equality and freedom. Dave Lackford, attorney I mentioned earlier, there was something on his Facebook page that struck me today. It was, if you know yourself, but I'm paraphrasing because it's from the art of war, and it's not a quotation by any means. If you know yourself, you'll win some battles. If you just know yourself, you'll win some battles. If you know yourself and your enemy, that's how you succeed. Okay, you'll win some battles if you just know yourself, but you'll also lose some, and you might lose big time. So that's why it's important to have Dave on, because, I'm sorry, the comment was from Dave. I got to credit Dave with the comment. That's why it's important to have Chris on. And Chris pointed out that what the COINTELPRO used to be when it was targeting the Black Panthers back in the 70s. And he said what he thought the prime example of it would be now if they were doing an operation. And he said that Grandmaster Jay fit the mold. And I've been thinking a lot about it, because there were other things that Chris said. Chris also talked about blue-green attacks and green-green attacks. And if Grandmaster Jay had been put up as a puppet, if you will, of the American government in order to keep the Black population divided, let's say that was the goal, and let's say that the government put him up there, wouldn't you think that the government, that somebody sitting around a table somewhere went, hey, aren't the chances pretty good that if we do this, this guy's just going to take everything we give him and he's going to turn it all against us? Which is what Grandmaster Jay would be doing if he confronts the congressman in Louisiana. That congressman represents Trump. That congressman represents the far right wing. Let's just leave it at that. And one other thing, if the government were going to set, and it's like the NFC's only been around for a few months, a couple of months, and that's part of the thing. All of a sudden, this big thing hops up, and that's part of what makes it seem like the government has something to do with the NFAC. The same thing applies to Dylan Stevens. Nobody knew who Dylan Stevens was 2 months ago, and now all of a sudden the Angry Viking is raking in a whole bunch of money. He's raking in a whole bunch of money to do his missions, and he came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he's got this big giant following. So couldn't the same thing apply to him? Just a thought. I want to touch on a few other things. The Boogaloos, the Proud Boys, and QAnon. And not going to be doing in depth on each one of them. Just kind of touching on them to start, because I'm going to be digging deeper into all of these, and you'll see why. Let me get a little sip there. The Boogaloos, or Boogaloo Boys, B-O-I-S, started out, the term Boogaloo started out as a slang for coming civil war. The Boogaloo and also some intelligence. Um, I imagine are being spent on watching these various groups, um, especially when you're talking about civil war, because what exactly, who's going to be fighting who? Who's the enemy? Who's the enemy? Well, according to the Boogaloo boys, um, they wear Hawaiian shirts and tactical gear, by the way. That's how they identify themselves. So if you see somebody in a Hawaiian shirt um, with military khakis and body armor, chances are it's a Boogaloo boy. Now there's some division within the organization, or there's some different branches. I'm not sure. Again, we're going to dig into this a little deeper. I'm just kind of introducing things, and it appears that one group is basically neo-Nazi, and the other group is libertarian, and I think it's possibly the split between racial divides. Okay. That's my guess, and I'm just guessing because, like I said, I haven't delved into any of these yet, let alone all of them. I'm just touching base. Their supposed their enemy, if you will, they call the Alphabet Boys, the FBI, the ATF, CIA, government organizations. So. The concept is a revolution against the government, specifically against liberals, even though liberals don't control the government, against some possible white supremacy against blacks. And this is, again, we're not monolithic. It's not all. These are just, there are, and all of this came from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So DOTR is one of the hashtags, and it's Day of the Rope. The Turner Diaries, which are anti-Semitic, very neo-Nazi, if you will, and yet I've heard of Boogaloo boys actually making sure nothing happened at a Black Lives Matter march. So again, it's not all encompassing. Now the Proud Boys are all male. They are classified as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. They say they're not all right, but they are trying to spread anti-white guilt. So I don't know how you exactly spin that. And it was started by Gavin McInnes, who was one of the co-founders of Vice Media. So that's a little about the Proud Boys. Again, we're going to be delving into all of them, and I'm trying to get some contacts with some people, and hopefully we'll have some guests on coming up. QAnon is the last one I want to talk about, and QAnon basically started with what was called Pizzagate back in 2016. Remember, Hillary Clinton was running a child abduction ring through a pizza joint in Washington D.C. and all that. Well, that from all of that, QAnon was formed. It came from an anonymous person using the letter Q, and it is still on the internet if you look. And the people that would reply to him would reply as Anon, so it became QAnon. Donald Trump says they are people who love the country. The FBI says they're a domestic terror threat. The internet calls them an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory group. And the conspiracy theories involve Bill Gates, involve Tom Hanks. I'm going off the top of my head, trying to remember. But that's a little bit, just a touch on what QAnon is, on what the Proud Boys are, and what the Alphabet Boys are. And I'm going to be back tomorrow night. We're going to do this again, 9 o'clock tomorrow night. And hopefully you will be back too. Flags upside down because I believe the nation is in distress. And I believe that maybe 40% of the country realizes it. But we're close to war within our own country, amongst ourselves. And the purpose of this show is to do everything possible so that doesn't happen. And who's going to be fighting who? Are the young going to be fighting the old? Black going to be fighting the white? Democrats going to be fighting Republicans? You know, this wouldn't be like the first Civil War, where there was a clear divide, states by states. This wouldn't be some states, but it's not going to line up. It's not going to line up based on climate, based on the ability to grow cotton, which is and free labor to plant, harvest that cotton. Okay, it's not going to be that kind of Civil War. And it scares the hell out of me. It really does. Thank you all. I love you all. It's the American Doofus Show. I'm your host, Barry Welsh. Don't be a doofus. Until next time, please try to somehow be a light in an ever darkening world. Hold on to the fact that there's some goodness today, because Breonna Taylor's family got reforms passed and hit the city of Louisville in their pocket. And that's how we're going to get police reform. Love y'all. Don't be a doofus.